Hi there, it's Mr. Evans here, going to look at the impact of ownership on some aspect of a business. So we're just coming to the end of this section now on understanding different business forms. Right down here, the effects of ownership on mission, objectives, decision and performance. So I've put together this table that really just goes over kind of my ideas about this section of the specification. I'll go through these different business ownerships one at a time. So we'll start with sole trader. So as you remember, a sole trader is when an individual runs their own business. They incur all the risks in terms of they are responsible for all the debts, they've got unlimited liability. Sole trader is not an incorporated business, but that means that the owner has a lot of control. Okay, so the mission and objectives will be set by the owner. That might be formally, they may write it down, or it might be informal. Okay, there's no pressure on the sole trader to do anything that they don't want to do. So most sole traders, I'm sure, will have some sort of formally written goal, so they know what they're working towards, and they will review that as needed. Doesn't need to be that process can be as in-depth or not as the sole trader requires. Because it's just the sole trader running the business, they're able to make quick decisions. They don't need to run their decisions past anybody else, so that's a positive aspect of being a sole trader. However, of course, they don't have access to huge wealth of resources. If they're trying to make a decision on some part of the business that is outside their area of expertise, then maybe they will struggle there, but nevertheless they are maybe able to make quick decisions. And the performance of the business, well, of course there's going to be external factors, but a large extent the performance of the business will be determined by the efforts of the owner, and they will be judging themselves on whether they've achieved their goals, their missions, and how well they've done. That might be a judge of the financial performance, the income they've earned. It may be some other judgment that they want to make. Have they grown over the course of the year? Have they managed to increase customer satisfaction, etc.? However, the owner wants to judge performance will be the measure that they use. So moving on now to private limited companies. So these, of course, are companies tend to be small businesses owned by family and friends. The mission objective of the company will need to be jointly agreed and negotiated, so it would probably tend to take a little bit longer than it would do for a sole trader to come to their mission. Important decisions will tend to be made with the owners in a private limited company, because there tend to be fewer of them. They tend to be more directly involved in the management of the company, and therefore the owners will be involved in quite a lot of the strategic decisions, which of course will be different for a public limited company who have got lots of institutional investors and lots of investors who aren't involved in the day-to-day running of the business. The performance of the company, it depends, and it varies from each limited company to each limited company, but we can tend to say that because these tend to be smaller businesses and the shareholders know each other, there will be a focus on providing long-term stability and value. The interest of the shareholders may well be the long-term survival of the company, rather than just short-term profit gain, and the performance of the company will be judged by those owners. Okay. So, moving on to the public limited company, where shares are freely traded on the stock market, more media involvement, more public scrutiny of a public limited company. So their mission objectives should be laid out formally in a published mission statement. It will tend to be negotiated, or at least communicated in some sort of formal way. and objectives will, that we had that triangle that I showed you with the mission statement at the top, going right down to the performance objectives of each individual employee. Each individual employee should see how they are contributing towards the business achieving its mission statement, and in a large company, as public limited companies tend to be, there will tend to be some sort of formal review. How have you as an individual achieved your objectives? How have we as a company moved towards it? And that process should be formalised and can be far more time consuming than it would be in a smaller business. Decisions, it's not always the case, but they can be quite protracted. You need to get people on side, you need to persuade people of your point of view in order for a decision to be made, which obviously takes far more time than it would do for just a sole trader. And big decisions voted on at the AGM will need the agreement of the majority of shareholders. In terms of performance, public limited companies, there might be a potential for short-termism, i.e. are the owners just focused on next year's dividend payment, or not always the case, maybe institutional investors do tend to be in for the long haul, and so therefore would be more interested in long term. But there is that potential for a short-term focus on next year's profits, and performance will be publicly scrutinised through the publication of the annual report and various other documents that they need to report on. City analysts will look at this, they'll release press releases, and there'll be media commentary regarding the performance of an organisation. Very, very public scrutiny, different from a sole trader who will essentially be reviewing their own performance. In terms of the not-for-profit, well, it's very difficult to fill this in. I mean, the not-for-profit sector is huge, with a diverse range of companies, organisations, I should probably say, involved in the not-for-profit sector. Big, like Oxfam; small, like maybe local youth centre. They will communicate their missions in a variety of ways. Maybe it will be formally done through an annual report, or just an informal communication, depending on the type of organisation. Decisions will obviously be made in support of achieving objectives. To be honest, you could say that about any of these organisations. But yeah, I mean, decision making in not-for-profits is really difficult to say. Whole range of different management styles used, so how decisions are made will very much depend on the individual organisation. And the performance, again, will depend on the nature of the organisation. Mutual societies will, a building society will publish an annual report to its members, looking at financial performance, quite similar to a public limited company in many ways, whereas a charity might choose a different way to review its performance, but it will still tend to have its performance formally reviewed by a board of trustees. The people who are running the organisation will want to make sure that that organisation is working towards achieving its mission, its objectives. So, finally, the public sector, their mission objectives will tend to be about the provision of a particular service, the fire department, the NHS. They want to provide a public service. Decisions, again, it will be determined by the size of the decision, the level of approval needed. Again, that could really apply to all of these organisations. But as a teacher, I need to make decisions, some of which will be approved. I won't need approval for, some of which I'll have to ask for permission from the head of department, and so on. The performance of public sector organisations will be under public scrutiny. Examples of public bodies that review public services include the CQC, the Care Quality Commission, who review the quality of healthcare. Ofsted obviously reviews schools, and I suppose the main way in which public sector organisations are judged are at elections. Governments get elected amongst other things, on the quality of the public services that are being provided. So that just wraps up this little section of the specification. I hope that made sense.